Welcome back to the Behind the Well show. Roger Abel. I'm fortunate to have in studio today Chris McNeil. He's the regional vice president of our Dallas office. I welcome you to the office. You're taking the spot of Elias
the
today.
Infamous Elias.
Yeah, he's out doing his passion, and that is refereeing football. He's at a referee camp in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Is that what he said?
Yeah, I think that's what he said. Do you think they hand out glasses to him at the end of the camp?
Make sure he can see.
Make sure that the refs can see, for the upcoming season.
Are you not a fan of the referees?
Well, they have their place, just like everything else.
You're
in
a
the world.
Badgers fan. I wouldn't be a fan of them either if I were you.
Don't hate. Don't hate.
Did you know?
I'll teach you how to Bucky later if you want.
Did you know Elias referees the practices for the
Badgers?
Yeah.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah, last fall he was going there every Tuesday to referee the practice.
Nice.
I told him that probably ain't going to happen this year.
Why is that?
Well, it was all day, every single Tuesday.
Oh, was it really?
Oh, yeah. Refereeing last year was kind of his full-time job. And he's going to laugh and be mad at me. I'm joking. I just rib him a little bit like, yeah, I knew you were going to be here. I'm like, hey, Elias, why aren't you going to be on the show? And I totally knew he was at refereeing camp. But I had to get him going a little bit. We love that he has the passion to do it.
Well,
it's really cool.
A better looking version of Elias today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. What's up, y'all? How you doing?
Nothing. We just got done filming the You're Not Dead podcast. So if you're watching this one, go check that one out. That's actually pretty cool. That's on the Premiere Facebook.
Mm-hmm. On the website.
We'll put a link.
We got all the links on there.
Yeah, we'll throw the link in the description. That was actually a good show. Chris does some really cool things on that show where he talks a little bit more market stuff, but also he has a piece on there where he talks about your favorite song and you have to have a dad joke. And Elias.
Dad jokes are important. Got to be able to laugh at yourself.
Elias just happened to have some dad hats here. So maybe we're going to have the dad jokes too.
There we go.
In conjunction with dad hats.
I mean, all three of us are dads, so that would make sense.
That's true.
Right.
But what I think I'm going to do for Elias is we're going to have a movie of the week because he doesn't watch movies.
Yeah, I was going to say he doesn't, which blows my mind. Although I get that because one of my absolute favorite things, PK, so I call it pre-kids, is going to the movies. Well, once you have kids, finding the time to go see a movie or do a date night, where you're watching a movie, it gets pretty tough. And the movies you are watching are going to be like Trolls and Bluey and
I just went
Dora
to
the
Stitch
Explorer.
last Friday.
That was a great movie, though.
Actually, it was a
really good movie. I took the kids to go see that for Father's Day. I was pleasantly surprised.
You went on Father's Day?
We did.
I think we went on Father's Day too that night.
Yep.
We were down at the lake and we went and watched Stitch. And now my kids, they're not really into movies all that much at the theater.
Right.
And I would say this is the first time we went and they were pretty engaged, but they got real engaged in the beginning because they didn't realize what the trailers were. They're like, what's that, Dad?
Right.
I'm like, well, that one comes out in August. So now they have a whole, hey, this one's coming in August. This one's in September. We want to go see these movies. So that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. No, and what's really fun is that Riley's starting to get to the age, and the twins are too, where they're starting to get more interested in, the movies I like to watch, like the Bond movies, the Mission Impossibles, the Top Guns, those types of things. So Mission Impossible, the one that just recently came out, The Final Reckoning, also really good movie. But Riley was like, yeah, I want to go watch that. And I was like, well, you have to watch the first one because it's part 2 of a 2-part movie series. And he's like, oh, well, let's go watch that one. So we turned on the previous, what was that, Mission Impossible 7 or something like that. He sat through the whole thing, loved it. I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere with it.
Well, you showed me that awesome movie theater in Dallas, and I'm jealous of that. That looks really awesome.
Dude, that thing's crazy. So it's this place called the Cosm that's about 25 minutes from where I live, but it's almost like the Sphere in Vegas. So it's completely immersive, completely like they did a thing. Because normally you can go there during football season, baseball season. If you can go watch a game. So if the Cowboys are playing in Philadelphia, you can go to this restaurant and watch the game, but the virtual reality experience makes it feel like you're at Lincoln Field without the concerns of getting beat up for being a Cowboys fan. I'm not a Cowboys fan, obviously. I'm a Patriots fan. but it's a super cool experience. But they did this with the Matrix, where they have the Matrix on the screen, but then everything around the screen is all fully submersive, like you're in the Matrix. Like, it was mind-blowing.
It
was super cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, we're going to go through some listener questions today. We teed a couple up on Chris's podcast, but let's kick into it. We're just going to kind of roll with it, see what happens. I'm going to throw it at you first, get your opinion, because one of the cool things about having other people on the show, we're similar, but everybody has a little bit different opinion. And, you know, maybe they're tired of hearing my opinion or Elias, and they're going to get yours today.
Boy.
So let's kick it off.
Get ready.
And just full disclosure, I've known Chris for 15 years.
Yeah,
he just joined us about a year ago.
Actually.
We met in 2009, so we go on 16 years.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it was 2009.
Yeah, so we're happy Chris is back in my life, and we're having a good time with him. So,
Rick,
that
goes for you too, by the way. Yeah.
Well, just making sure for now.
It's always more fun when Roger Abel's in the picture.
All right, Rick asks, my wife and I don't agree on when to retire, which I think is actually common with a lot of couples. I'm 58, ready to slow down. My wife is 55 and wants to work until 67. We've saved well, but we're just not on the same page as when to retire. How do we plan when one of us wants out early?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, congratulations to Rick and his wife for having that conversation, because I don't think most couples take the time to sit down and discuss what they envision retirement looking like for themselves. In fact, one of the practices that I'll do with the retirement planning and the retirement education classes that I'll do down in Texas is one of the very first things before we even get into anything is I've got this 2-page document that looks like a cloud and has different goals and objectives and hobbies and things to do in retirement. And I'll tell the couple, okay, take a look at that. And I want you to circle what you would like to do in retirement or what you envision your retirement looking like. They do that a couple minutes. And then I say, okay, both of you take what you circled and what you envision your retirement looking like and talk about it and compare it. Are they the same? Are they different? If they're different, then that's an opportunity where you're able to go back and discuss further what you want that to look like. I think the other challenge that you have when it comes to retirement is not everyone that's married is the same age. You know, so in this case, you know, Rick's 58, she's 55, she's 3 years younger. If he wants to retire at 65 and she's 62 and typically wants to retire at, most couples want to retire at the same time. I don't think anybody's looking forward to their significant other being able to sleep in on a Tuesday morning while the other one's having to get up and get ready for work, right? But there are different challenges and things that have to be taken into consideration if you are going to retire pre-65. And I use 65 because that's typically the most common age that we see most people wanting to retire. And the main reason for that is what? Well, you qualify for Medicare. You know, if you're retiring before that and, you know, the company you're working for doesn't provide health insurance to kind of bridge that gap to age 65, then that's something that have to be taken into consideration. I think the other important thing to look at in this case is, you know, do they have a financial plan in place? You know, do they have the budget in place? Do they have a solid idea and foundation of, are they able to retire earlier, or, you know, are they going to need to work till, you know, 67 like what she wants to do?
So here's what I really love about this industry is that when we do podcasts like this, we're always kind of learning too. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you teach this course and you ask people to envision their retirement. About a year ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago, we did a podcast and we talked about having a vision board. And some of this stuff, you know, as we do this, we're learning too. And I'd never done this. And I went home and told Meg, I said, let's come up. Meg is my wife, by the way, which listeners to this show know. Let's come up with what number one, what do we want to accomplish before retirement? But then when we're retired, what do we want to do in retirement? And we went our separate ways and we each wrote down what we wanted to do. And we spent about an hour doing it. It wasn't like, hey, here's a couple minutes. It was like, be very thoughtful of it, because one of the things we recognize that happens in everyday life with most consumers is you're excited about doing what's easily in front of you today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, well, today I need a new house, or hey, I want a new car, or whatever it is today. But in the big picture, those things may or may not be that important. And went our separate ways, brought it back. And there were things that we thought we wanted to accomplish, like soon, that were nowhere on that list of goals. It was only on there because this is what's right in front of us and this is what we'd like to do today, but it wasn't a long-term goal.
Right.
And what it does, it helps you start to prioritize what you're going to do. But you mentioned something about having a financial plan.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key parts of the financial plan is actually getting a grasp or hold on how you're going to spend money. And if you haven't went through this exercise, how are you ever going to figure out what you think you're actually going to spend? And here's the most common things that people do. And this, in my opinion, is a massive mistake. And you really need to think about this is we sit down with somebody and they're 62 and we ask them, well, you know, how much are you going to be spending in retirement, or what do you want your paycheck to be in retirement?
Mm-hmm.
And when they're 62, they're looking at it and saying, well, next year I'm going to travel. So I need whatever it is, $5,000 a month for that. And the number's pretty big.
That's some legitimate travel.
Yeah, but that,
You know?
I mean,
$5,000 a month.
That's 60 grand. You'd be surprised. That's
some cool vacations. Let's go.
maybe Disney's like 20.
Right.
So it goes.
Yeah, I mean, that's
you
a
take
good
your
point.
grandkids to Disney, you got 20 grand.
Man, that's the only place where you can spend 20 grand and you can say, thank you, sir, may I have another?
We love Disney.
I know, we do too.
I don't want to admit it,
Right.
but I do.
So have you done the Disney cruise ship?
We're going in December. We're actually going with another financial advisor and his daughter, who is my daughter's like best friend.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what surprised me even more about it is that when we took the kids, that there is an adult-only level of the Disney cruise ship.
Because you can drop them off at the kids club.
Well, yeah, but they don't have kids. Like these are couples,
Just adults
that are just adults that had kids that are now older and have moved on or moved out. And these adults are still going on the Disney cruise because it's literally the best cruise experience that they've ever had. So even now that their kids are old enough and not with them, they're still going on these Disney cruise ships because of the experience.
That's pretty cool.
Right? That's
we did a cruise 20 years ago and it was a Hawaiian cruise and it wasn't a great experience for us. It was like 14 days and we're like, yeah, we're never going to do it.
I feel like that's a little long to be on a ship.
We were on for like 3 days at sea, down, and 3 days back. It wasn't great, but
I'd
neither
go a
here nor
little
there.
stir crazy. Anyway, we're
going to
digressing.
go again.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing in retirement is you got to get a handle on how you're going to spend money. And what we really started to gravitate towards too, we're building these plans, is making people really think about what's a need.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the expenses we will have from the day we retire until we're 90.
Yep.
And travel is not part of that.
It's a want or a wish.
It's going to be
cases.
a want,
yeah.
right? Hey, I want to travel for the next 15 years and I want to spend whatever it is, $20,000 a year. And then if I could do all my needs, all my wants, what are the things I wish I could do? And this is how we really start to craft these great plans where people don't run the risk of underspending.
Right.
But what I see too often is people haven't spent any time really thinking about or sitting down with their partner and saying, this is how I think we're going to spend money. And this is what's important to me. And this is what I'd like to do. So what happens, all the spending gets lumped into the needs category.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to look at it, it's like, I don't know too many 85-year-olds spending $15,000 a month on anything.
Right.
I mean, I envision when I'm 85, I'm going to be really happy if I can get a cup of Joe. It's probably going to take me 3 or 4 hours to get going because it takes me an hour and a half now. And maybe I can go throw a fishing pole in at the little pond I'm envisioning I'm going to be at.
You and I will be like grumpy old men.
I'm going to pound
Just
a couple
fishing
of,
for a walleye.
I'm going to have a couple
sodas.
Couple Millers and call it good.
All right. Yeah.
Sodas, adult sodas.
Adult sodas.
That was one of my takes on, you know, what you just said there is that, hey, we need to sit down and compare notes.
Right.
And I have some real life experience with this actually. So this is very similar to a client that I have.
Okay.
This happened about 2 years ago. I have a client, 66, 61. Okay. 66-year-old. She worked as an HR professional, dealt with the union. The other one, professor. The husband who was 61, always thought they would work till they're 70.
Mm-hmm.
Like said that. I always just envision myself working till I'm 70. And I had the conversation that, hey, Your wife wants out because the union's stressful. You've done a great job saving. You don't need any more money.
Right.
I understand you want to work until you're 70, but that's 9 years. So your wife is now 75, which actually means...
Oh, the husband was the younger of the two.
Yes.
Oh, I thought,
So-
okay, got it.
So what it
Yeah.
actually means is her retirement's over. So here's what I think Rick really needs to do. He needs to go ask an upside down question to his wife and say, hey, what is it that makes you want to work until you're 67? Because it might be, well, that's when I get my full Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
You know, full Social Security just really means that's the age you can take it and still work. And it doesn't matter how much you make.
Right.
Right? It's just a number.
Right.
So Rick, you need to get to the root cause of what is it that's giving or making your wife want to work until you're 67. And that's what I do with this couple.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? They're happily retired.
Right. Right.
And they never thought about it. She's not thinking, man, my husband's going to be 70 or 71. And we just missed out on all of these really good years. And people in general, I'm sure you'll agree, we never think we're going to get less healthy. We know we are,
Mm-hmm.
but we just don't want to believe it.
Right. Or know when it's going to happen.
Right.
Right.
And we don't want to admit we're going to slow down. I can see it with people who are in their 70s all the time. They don't want to admit they're slowing down, so they're forcing themselves to do things,
Yep.
and they're doing it on a marginal manner.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing too, something to consider, and this often, and I've experienced this with my clients as well, is that you'll have different views of what retirement looks like. The beautiful thing about the financial planning process that we utilize is that we can run multiple different scenarios. So we can run a scenario on what the husband envisions retirement looking like and what they want for income in retirement, and do the same thing for what the wife wants. And what I've found in the past is that there's one that probably doesn't have as high of a probability of success. I mean, that's really what we're trying to get down to, is the probability of you not running out of money before you pass away, where that allows them to make more of an educated decision on what makes the most sense. And to your point, determine and prioritize what's the most important to both of them when it comes to what they envision that retirement looking like.
You know, we're assuming Rick's done a financial plan. My guess is
My
they
assumption
actually
would be
haven't.
that they haven't.
I would guess that they haven't done it. So that's probably step one is go find an advisor. You can go to btwellshow.com. You can go out to our company page, Premier IWM, get a hold of Chris or I or Elias. He's not here, but we'll throw a plug for him.
Yeah, we'll plug him
Or
in.
somebody here will help you do it, Rick, if you haven't done this, because ultimately a lot of the questions that you're thinking about and your wife is thinking about can be answered through the planning process. And a lot of things might come to light. You know, there might be things that you haven't discussed with your wife that is providing her apprehension. Maybe it's healthcare and she doesn't know how to deal with it. Maybe it is she just doesn't know what her sense of purpose will be. I think we mentioned that, you know, you mentioned figuring out what you're going to do in retirement. We spend a lot of time focusing on the money. The money is just the conduit to what you're going to do.
Right.
Like it's just the
means to the end.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the engine that drives your ability to live a lifestyle. And I think a lot of people forget about why they saved money. You know, they have this big pile of money and then they don't want to spend it. Well, what was the point?
Yeah, what was the point of saving the money if you're not going to spend it?
The money you have, the reason you saved it was to generate income. It's not to sit there and it be in a pile unless your goal is to give it all to your kids. And that's
Because you can't take it with you.
you're right.
Right.
And so either you're going to use it, spend it, give it in concert with your values, what's important to you, or your kids and beneficiaries and other people will.
Yeah, and I think the other root cause that Rick's wife might be thinking about and maybe not mentioning yet is her fear of her outliving him and there still being enough for her to take for income once he's passed away. Because statistically, us guys are going to predecease our significant others because we have a tendency of doing stupid stuff.
Well,
Right.
I'm sure most of the questions I have can be answered through a really thorough planning process.
Yeah, 100%.
I have another one I'm gonna throw at you. I got this thrown at by a client the other day, or potential client, I should say. And they wanted to know, they have a 401k and it's their biggest asset. They're 45 and just wanted to know, is it too risky having my 401k be my biggest asset? Because they don't have a lot of savings outside of it. And they're like, should I start diversifying throughout other retirement accounts versus just my 401k?
Yeah, I would say the answer to that is yes.
But
but it's not uncommon for investors' largest asset when it comes to their overall portfolio being in their 401k or 403b or 457, depending on what they do.
And I think it depends on your locale. Because in Iowa, most of our clients, their biggest assets in their 401k, right? Or IRA. Places where there's higher incomes and cost of living is higher, a lot of those people are maxing 401ks. So then they're looking to other vehicles to go invest additional money to meet their needs because their incomes are higher. They're going to have to save more.
Yep.
But let me ask you a question. What's the risk of having the 401k be the biggest asset?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. So
because there's different types of risk, right?
100%.
Like, I don't think it's the investment risk. I think there's other risks associated with it, because likely whatever you're owning in the 401k, you're going to own investments of similar risk outside of there. So I think it's the risks that aren't obvious that this individual may be taking.
Yeah, I think the ability to be flexible in retirement, in all facets of retirement, is crucial. One of those abilities to be flexible is having the options on which accounts to take income from year in and year out. And most importantly, and what I'm referring to that by is that, you want to have 3 buckets of money. You want to have your tax deferred bucket, i.e. your 401k or your retirement plan, your tax-free bucket, i.e. your Roth IRA, and then your taxable bucket. Those are your assets that you've already paid taxes on, but realized gains are taxed as capital gains, whether it be short-term or long-term, versus ordinary income taxes. I always tell people, let's worry about what we can control and let's minimize our risk on what we can't. So what we can't control is we don't know what the tax code or what your tax bracket is going to be in retirement. So in this case, he's 45, let's say he's looking to retire at 65. We've got 20 years. We don't know what the tax code is going to look like 20 years from now. But what we do want to have the ability to do is dictate what we pay in taxes 20 years from now when you're in retirement. So depending on that tax code and depending on that tax bracket, being able to diversify your assets outside of your 401k and be able to start building and growing that tax-free bucket and that taxable bucket gives you that ability that year in and year out, working with your financial professional, you can choose which of those 3 buckets to take income from to meet your needs in retirement and still do it in the most tax-efficient manner possible.
I think that right there is the biggest risk, is the tax strategy. But another risk that's there is it's a concentration risk, because if you look at most 401ks, it's limited options. And it doesn't really matter. I can tell you what the largest percentage of that 401k likely is in. It's the S&P 500.
Right. And it's probably the S&P 500 within what's called these target date portfolios.
Right. And that's the largest equity holding likely.
Right.
Or even if people are picking themselves, they gravitate towards that index because it's familiar to 100%. Them. So I think the other risk you run is some diversification risk, if that is where all of your money is at, because now you're sleeving investments to one mix, where when you go into the world of working with a financial advisor, or if you're doing this yourself, you go into a self-directed account, the world becomes your oyster. You could still have that S&P 500 or whatever index you really like, but now you can start to satellite with different strategies that may or may not outperform over the long term. But as we know, the more diversification you add, historically, returns rise through diversification.
Right. Well, so I think and then it's, life getting lifey is what I like to say, right? Like, what if something comes up in case of emergency break glass, and you've got to tap into some of the assets within your portfolio based on an emergency or based on goals or an opportunity that you're wanting to take advantage of that you may have not thought of.
And you had to do it on April 10th and you didn't have any cash.
Right.
And the market was down 19%.
And more importantly, if you're having to tap into the 401k, you're looking at a tax penalty for taking it pre-59.5.
Yeah.
Or even worse, like having to take a loan out on your 401k. So if you've got those different buckets, this specifically the taxable bucket, you can tap into that without having to worry about paying that tax penalty and still be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, I think, we see a lot of people, 401ks, there's the good, here's the good and the bad news about the 401k. The good news, it's automatic. So people don't think about it that much. Like it's effort to go stop your contribution. It takes effort to do that. And inherently we are creatures of minimal effort. Right. I mean, if you have two options, it's exert effort or do nothing.
The path of least resistance.
Yeah, especially in the world of unknown things.
Right.
For most people, investing is a little bit unknown. So they're like, man, I'm just going to do nothing. And it goes back to, I had a question from a client.
I call that analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Right?
But in the world of 401k, not doing anything is typically the right move. But over time, you might have to make change. And I had a customer ask me recently, and it's a new customer. They'd set up their 401k like 10 years ago, automatic contributions, never touched it. They don't look at it, right? They're like, I thought the balance was good when I did it, but they're like, am I invested too aggressively or not? And I said, well, here's the good news is you haven't done anything. So that's actually really good investor behavior. And if you've been heavily weighted toward equities the last 10 years, you've done exceptionally well. I said, with that said, we're back to almost all-time highs in the markets. If you're nervous about your allocation, there's a couple of things that you should do because, you haven't panicked. Things are at a good time. If you're going to reallocate or rebalance, now is looking like a pretty good time to do it right now. In 10 years, you'd be like, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But he said, hey, what do I do? And I just came up with some ideas for him. I'm like, well, first, have you logged in? Seriously, like this guy had set these up and never did it. And he's like, no, I don't even have an account. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about the people out there who have done the best thing for themselves, truthfully, and set this up and just done nothing.
Set it and forget it.
Okay, you set it and forget it.
Yeah.
But now you're 3, 5, 8 years out from retirement, and we need to start thinking about how are we going to build a distribution strategy?
Yeah.
What are some of the things you think people should be looking at doing at this point? If they have a 401k, it's been aggressive, they haven't done anything for 10 years, which is awesome. What's the next steps?
Well, I think if they haven't done the financial plan yet, then that's the first step.
Well, I can tell you they haven't.
Right.
Because if they had, the advisor before us would have had a login for them.
Right.
And said, hey, I'd really like to have that statement.
Right. Yeah, that'd be nice. So we always talk about risk tolerance, or most people will talk about risk tolerance. I know you and I and Elias and the other advisors here on the team, we look at what's called risk capacity, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. I haven't talked about it for so long.
I mean, it's so good though, because at the end of the day, if we've got the financial plan, we've got the goals and objectives, we can project out an annual return that meets their goals and objectives. And depending on what those are, for someone that might live a little bit more frugal than others, they may not need an 8, 9, 10% annual return to meet those goals and objectives. They may only need a 4 to 5% return annually to meet their objectives. Well, if that's the case, why would we be invested heavily in equities trying to get an 8 or 9, 10% return when we don't need an 8 or 9, 10% return? This is someone, at home plate trying to hit a home run where all they need to do is hit a single.
They might just have to hit a sack fly.
They might
a bunt.
Right. So I love talking. So I will always say, look, everyone's familiar with risk tolerance. Let's talk about risk capacity. So I think if we've got that financial plan in place, we can determine what that risk capacity is, and then we can take the proper steps on how potentially, if warranted, reallocating the investment mix within the 401k to be more in line with their time horizon and their goals and objectives.
I like that answer. And I think it, due to the fact that, you're getting close to retirement, it starts to bring into play, how do we build a bucket strategy? When's the right time to start building up the cash? Is it 1 year out? Is it 2 years out? Is it a gradual play? And these are all the answers that we can do through a financial plan.
Right.
With that said, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah,
this was fun. I do miss Elias. I don't want him to feel like we were bagging on him.
Well,
we're excited to have him back. Maybe we'll have we can have myself and you and Elias all on one show together.
You almost said it. And I was going to laugh if you said it. You almost said it. And I was like, oh my God, I hope he says it. And he did it. Right.
If anybody out there is looking to get help with a financial plan, go to btwellshow.com. We have all of the links in the description. You can click get started. One of us is happy to reach out to help you.
And I think the other thing that's important, because I did get a couple questions from some listeners on my podcast, is that they lived in the state of Washington. Well, they know that I'm based out of Texas. Y'all are based out of Iowa, but we work with people all over the country.
I don't know how many states I'm licensed in, but it's a lot.
Right.
I don't think I'm in Alaska.
So a lot of people think because if they don't live in the state of Iowa or the state of Texas that we can't help them. That's just absolutely not the case.
Well, here's what's ironic, especially for us, Chris. In Iowa, many of our clients, when they retire,
they move out of Iowa?
Well, they spend a vast majority of their time, if they don't have family here, in a different state. So, I mean, I've got clients I can think in about every single state, and they've been with us for a long time. And what's funny, you watch them move from state to state. Like, had one who went to Texas, they're down in Tyler,
right?
And then they moved, and now they're up in the state of Washington. Well, I got one in New York. They're like, we moved to New York. I have a client who moved to Pennsylvania because they like history. So, over 22 years of doing this, I have clients scattered out everywhere, which is kind of fun because,
gives you a reason to travel the country and go see them, right?
Yeah, I can,
100%. But no, I just wanted to mention that because of that question. Be like, hey, we really like, what you guys have to say and enjoy the podcast, but we're in the state of Washington. Are you able to help us?
Yeah,
or can you refer us to somebody up there? No, we absolutely can help you. So,
yeah. Well, appreciate everybody watching. Like I said, if you need some help, click the links in the description.
Yep.
Thanks for being on here, Chris.
See y'all. Take care.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure a profit or protect against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure a profit or protect against loss. Dollar cost averaging involves continuous investment in securities regardless of fluctuations in price levels. Investors should consider their ability to continue purchasing through periods of low price levels. Such a plan does not assure a profit and does not protect against loss in declining markets. This recording contains only general descriptions and is not a solicitation to sell any insurance product or security, nor is it intended as any financial or tax advice. For information about specific insurance needs or situations, contact your financial professional. This video is intended to assist in educating you about insurance generally and not to provide personal service. They may not take into account your personal characteristics such as budget, assets, risk tolerance, family situation, or activities which may affect the type of insurance that would be right for you. In addition, state insurance laws and insurance underwriting rules may affect available coverage and its costs. Guarantees are based on the claims-paying ability of the issuing company. If you need more information or would like personal advice, you should consult an insurance professional.